last week's sermon, we're at a point through the Exodus story that is somewhat disturbing. I mean, there's been so much beauty and provision and blessing of God as we've seen him deliver Israel out of Egypt, provide for them through the wilderness with food and water and even protection from the Amalekites as they attack them from behind. And God, in his extravagant love and mercy, he's displaying himself powerfully on this mountain. And lo and behold, while Moses is up for 40 days and 40 nights having conversations with God for the people are impatient. They can't wait any longer, and they take matters into their own hands, convince Aaron or pressure him to construct this golden calf. And they take worship to Yahweh, but ascribe it to this calf. And we talked about the significance of what is happening in this passage and sometimes how it's misunderstood. And this text really does give us a foreshadowing picture of the gospel and the salvation of the Lord, because there is clear disobedience and failure and rebellion of the people. But even in that sin, Moses demonstrates the heart of God by offering salvation to all, because he says, hey, who's on the Lord's side? Come beside me. Only the Levites do. We see the wrath and the justice of God being poured out as the punishment of sin, reinforcing Romans 6:23. The wages of sin is death. And so 3,000 are slaughtered at the sword by the swords of the Levites. We see that portrayed. Then we see beautifully the mediation and the intercession of Moses between God and the people, foreshadowing or even illustrating for us what Christ does now, and he did when he offered his atoning sacrifice for humanity. And that we talked about in the sermon on Sunday, we touched briefly on the role of Christ as intercessor, the role of Christ as mediator. I want to address, though, a question in this discussion. Do our prayers matter? And are our prayers needed? I think sometimes we look at God and his sovereignty, and we may ask the question, well, what difference does it make if I pray? Do my prayers really have any impact or influence on God? And we have to be careful, because when we read this text, specifically Exodus 32 and 33, if we read it haphazardly or without discipline, we can develop some bad theology. What we see is God interacting with Moses and God desiring Moses to intercede, because he wanted us to see the importance of intercession. He wanted us to see established this relationship that Christ would one day fulfill, and even to this day continues on our behalf. But there is an important question. Does God desire to hear from us? Does God desire for us to pray? And the answer is yes. We see prayer reinforced, emphasized, and even commanded all throughout Scripture. The Psalms, in fact, are a series of prayers. Jesus commands in Matthew chapter 6 in his modeling of prayer. And there's so much emphasis around prayer for you and I. We are interceding. We should intercede for each other. We should go and take our petitions to the Lord. Christ intercedes on our behalf as our mediator. God is sovereign. I cannot manipulate. I cannot control. And in fact, my desire to manipulate and my desire to control always ends in failure. We see that at the Tower of Babel. We see that at Mount Sinai with the golden calf. My intercession to God is not to manipulate or to control him. My intercession to God is to plead with him to be faithful to his character, to demonstrate his goodness and grace to the people, to humbly respect who he is. I think our approach to God through prayers of intercession, we should constantly and always be praying. 2 Thessalonians 5, there's beauty in interceding even on the behalf of others. But it is not a negotiation with God. It is not a manipulation or control of God, but it is an opportunity for us to see and understand his nature that is immovable, his promises that are unmistakable and unshakable. And it is not so much of us molding God to us, but is us conforming to his image through the humility of prayer. And I would encourage you to A, be reaffirmed in the significance of your prayer, and to be challenged in the habits of your prayer. Even to be maybe be willing to reshape the attitude of your prayers, that it is one of humility, one that affirms and acknowledges the character and nature of God, and we willfully submitting to his will. This is a thought for you to consider in light of what we see happening in Exodus chapter 32, and with joy in the image of Moses as the intercessor and how that describes what Christ does for us, and then also reinforcing the relationship of humanity through prayer, communing with God. I would love to hear what you're learning in your prayers. I would love it if you would reach out, or maybe you have questions. Don't hesitate to let us know what they may be. And as always, check out our website if you missed last week's sermon, or a plethora of other resources that are made available for you. And until next time, pray hard and God bless.